In the final installment of this series on scanning poetry, we'll look at mixed meter, free verse, and other variations. The last example we looked at from Longfellow's Evangeline, we identified as dactylic hexameter. This is the forest primeval, the murmuring pines and the hemlocks. But if you look closely, we may not have been as precise as we could have been. If you look at the very last foot, you'll notice that it in fact has 2 syllables rather than 3. That the first syllable is stressed, hem, and the second syllable is unstressed. If you remember, a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable is called a trochee. So, in fact, what we have is a line consisting of 5 dactyls and 1 trochee. So, in other words, 2 different kinds of feet mixed together to make a single poetic line. So, in fact, not all poems are consistent, and many are even less consistent than Longfellow's. One example of this kind of mixing we've seen is in William Cullen Bryant's To a Waterfowl. In the first 4 lines, we see how Cullen Bryant, in fact, mixes different meters. Wither midst falling dew, while glow the heavens with the last steps of day, far through their rosy depths dost thou pursue thy solitary way. So this is an instance of mixed meter. If we count up the stressed syllables, we'll find that the first line, in fact, has 3 feet, the second line has 4, the third line has 5, and the final line of the stanza again has 3. So we could identify this as a mixed meter consisting of trimeter, tetrameter, and pentameter. Poets, as we saw with Longfellow, also may mix different types of feet. Another example of this we've looked at is Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee. If we scan the first 2 lines of Annabel Lee and read it for extra emphasis, here's what we find. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea. Now, if you look at the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables, you'll find a mixture of anapasts, as in it was many and many a year, 2 unstressed syllables followed by 1 stressed syllable, and iambs, which, as we know, are unstressed syllables followed by stressed syllables, as in dum by the sea. So, if you look at the second line of Annabel Lee, we find 1 anapast followed by 2 iambs, in a kingdom by the sea. When a poet doesn't use any consistent meter or rhythm that can really be identified, the result is free verse. The first major poet to champion the use of free verse was Walt Whitman. If we look at the first 5 lines of Whitman's Song of Myself, it's already evident that he's not sticking to any recognizable meter, and that he's mixing rhythms throughout the poem. If you look at the first line, I celebrate myself and sing myself, what we in fact have is a relatively standard line of iambic pentameter. But once we read on in the poem, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul, I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Find a mixture of different types of feet, and a great deal of variation in the length of lines. So this is, again, what we call free verse.